morning, dude. Let's make a little noise, Colorado.
Remembering John Wayne comes easy for me. I'm Bob Shelton, and I have walked and worked on these streets at Old Tucson many, many times with John Wayne. John Wayne first became acquainted with the magic of Arizona in 1938 when he was featured in John Ford's epic motion picture Stagecoach, filmed in Arizona's majestic Monument Valley. He came back to Arizona in 1948 to film Red River. He returned again in 1957 to star in Howard Hawks' drama Rio Bravo. He followed that up with 3 more films, McClintock, El Dorado, and Rio Lobo, all made right here at Old Tucson. It all began one day in 1962. I came back to Old Tucson and found there was a film company waiting to talk about a film project. I rushed over to the Mexican Plaza where they were waiting. They took me to their boss standing behind our adobe mission. When he turned around, it was John Wayne. He grabbed my hand to shake it, and I almost went into cardiac arrest. He said in a direct manner, "Mr. Shelton, I want to make a movie called McClintock. I want to paint your town, build some buildings here and there, and so what are you going to do for me?" So I said, "Mr. Wayne, I have a used Cadillac, a good pocket knife, and a nice wife who is a fair cook but a damn good bridge player. You can have them all." He grabbed my hand again and said, "You got a deal, Bobby." And he called me that the rest of his life.
He was bigger than life, I mean, when you're working with him, you just, your mouth is almost hanging open. I mean, you don't, but you say, by golly, I'm here, I'm working with John Wayne. I can't hardly believe it,
Well, I'd get here early in the morning before the park opened, and I'd walk down the main street here, look around at the buildings and think to myself, you know what, John Wayne walked these streets, and let me tell you, that would kind of send a chill up my spine because I grew up watching John Wayne. He had such a presence on the screen, and I think he embodied the spirit of the West, the fearless cowboy who faced every challenge, had convictions that he stayed to all the time, always spoke his own word. Many times went against the grain, so to speak, but you always knew exactly what he was in those movies.
Back then, he was the star of the movies, and the whole town was in a fervor, so to speak, that John Wayne's in town doing a movie. How lucky am I, because I witnessed history.
We used to walk in places with him, and everybody's mouth would open and the whole place would be quiet, and we'd all disappear because everybody was looking at John Wayne. Well, he was a very good friend of my mom and dad's, and he was very good to them. I mean, they really saw a lot of the world with somebody that a lot of people never got to know, except on the screen. And he was very good to all his kids.
The working man really identified with John Wayne because everybody kind of thought of him as his next door neighbor. At times he appeared bigger than life. But he started off in the business as a real working stiff. He was in the business for almost 11 years before he got a big break in the movie Stagecoach in 1939. He played the part of Ringo Kid.
The John Ford film Stagecoach was a milestone in John Wayne's career. At the age of 31, he had more than 60 films to his credit, mostly B-Westerns.
The B-Western movie star, back in the days of the Depression, worked on what they called poverty role. They made a lot of low-budget westerns. John Wayne emerged from that, mainly because of the role in Stagecoach. But unlike a lot of those B-Western film stars who faded away, John Wayne went on to bigger and better productions. He started working with better directors, had bigger budgets.
He told me once when I was with him in Hawaii, my family and I were, that he probably made more bad movies than anybody in Hollywood. But he never quit.
Stagecoach sparked a relationship between the Duke and Arizona. Ultimately, he would become a rancher and a cattleman in the state.
In the Western, I think the reason people identified with the Westerns is because John Wayne always played the kind of parts he wanted to be. And I think just about any young man in America at some time wanted to be John Wayne. So
Well, I first was aware of him back in the 1940s during the war when I was a teenager. You know, you go to those war pictures he made back in the 40s, and you come out of that theater and, boy, I want to get in that service and get me a piece of those guys. And then in 1966, I got hired to do that War Wagon picture. And that's when I met John Wayne the first time. And I told him at that time that he was responsible for me joining the Navy. And he got a big kick out of that because he knew that already, that he was responsible for a lot of guys going in the service, you know.
Rio Bravo was the first of a trilogy shot at Old Tucson starring Wayne. All were directed by the famed Howard Hawks. Each film was a variation of a lawman with a trusted sidekick defending their town against unscrupulous outlaws. El Dorado and Rio Lobo completed the trilogy. Wayne starred with teen idol Ricky Nelson, Walter Brennan, and one very recognizable crooner.
Stumpy fixed something.
I asked you a question. You didn't answer it.
All right, I'll answer you. I didn't sleep good, didn't eat anything. I had a beer and it didn't do any good.
Think you can stand your watch?
When I can't do that, I'll let you know.
In 1958, Dean Martin rode down the same street in the classic Western Rio Bravo. Martin played John Wayne's hard-luck deputy, Dude, who always seemed to have the bad guys hot on his heels. Excuse me, folks. Sometimes it gets mighty hot here at Old Tucson Studios. He didn't like high noon. He didn't like the concept of high noon, that a sheriff would stand alone and nobody would help him. So he made Rio Bravo in defiance of that movie. That was his kind of political stance.
If you didn't know him, you get mad at him because he was very opinionated, but he believed in what he said. But he was also very good to a lot of people, and he helped everybody that he could in the movie industry, and he helped his family, and he helped a lot of people. He never had he always believed that the fans were the one that made him great.
He would interact with the extras. He wasn't aloof, and he would stop by and say hello, and everybody treated him respectfully. When we broke for lunch or broke for a break, coffee break, or whatever it may be, he was always accessible to everybody.
Because Duke was always around the camera. You know, even if he wasn't directing, he was there watching. You know, he'd just be looking, he'd be mouthing some of your words like that, you know.
Rio Bravo is regarded as one of the best Western films Hawks ever made. It is likely that Duke assisted him in blocking out the following scene.
You want a closer look?
At this location in Rio Bravo, John Wayne initiates the climactic hostage exchange scene as bad guy Claude Akins is swapped for Wayne's buddy, Dean Martin.
Look out!
John Wayne made many lifelong friends here in Arizona, including the veteran actor Don Collier, who made 2 pictures with the Duke. Don also starred in the television series The Outlaws and appeared in Bonanza, Gunsmoke, and The Virginian. He was a principal in the long-running TV series The High Chaparral, filmed here at Old Tucson.
I like to feel like I went through the John Wayne School of Acting, and it's real simple. You show up on time, whatever your call is, you be there on time, you know your dialogue, and hang around the camera. And if you do those things, you can get along with John Wayne.
When I first met the Duke on McClintock, he had just finished The Alamo, which he personally financed. The movie earned a Best Picture nomination in 1961. It was a box office success, but was financially stressful for Wayne. So the lighthearted comedy McClintock was just the remedy Duke needed. Andrew McLaughlin, his good friend, directed the film that co-starred Wayne's favorite leading lady, Maureen O'Hara.
Behind me you'll see Golden Gate Mountain, a familiar backdrop used in hundreds of scenes here at Old Tucson Studios. Enjoy this funny scene from the classic Western McClintock, shot here in 1962.
You are going to tell me why you packed up, picked up, and walked out on me.
2 years ago, you remember, you came home from Denver with lipstick all over your...
my collar.
I've got the shirts to prove it.
Who cares?
Why, you bigot!
They were great together. They were well suited. And she was a very tall woman and this beautiful complexion, milk white complexion, and this lovely red hair. And she stayed in the shade all the time, but she was a good sport. She was very professional. She was always on time, always knew her lines, and they just were right for each other, you know.
The cast and crew of McClintock were in Tucson for 12 weeks. Many local actors and extras were used in the picture and have fond memories of working here at Old Tucson. The Duke was at the height of his popularity and spirit as the biggest box office star in the world.
And then all of a sudden, a hush comes over the entire entourage, and out walks John Wayne, and his presence really was larger than life. And it was really interesting because he didn't rehearse. He stepped in and boom, 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 and when they were finished, that's a wrap. But to see him in action and to see how he was respected by his peers and to see his personal persona, pretty awesome.
And when he filmed a movie in McClintock, he stayed at the ranch for the whole filming. And he was a very tough guy on the set because he demanded perfection from everybody. And then he just liked to come back and they'd play gin rummy for days and days and days. And they'd keep score and everybody was owing everybody else money and nobody ever paid off. But they'd always argue about who owed it. And they called each other pigeons and they were set up. It was just, they had fun together.
And then one morning the phone rang on a Sunday and he said, would you like to come down to the Ramada? I said, I'd be glad to come down. So we had this game and he called John Ford, Pappy Ford. Duke said, I'll play with Pappy because he's lousy. You play with Con. Finally got up to what we call a slam in bridge. Went up to 7 clubs and I doubled and Duke didn't have a club in his hand. And when the hand was over, he stood up and he said, damn it. He said, Pappy, don't you know, I told you, don't ever believe if I say something and I never say it again, I don't have it. And he was really angry.
Wayne returned to Tucson to film El Dorado, the second installment in the Hawks trilogy. Just a year earlier, Wayne had an operation in a serious battle with lung cancer. Despite his obvious discomfort on the set, he never complained. The Duke and co-star Robert Mitchum work well together, providing an atmosphere of professionalism.
In the motion picture El Dorado, shot here at Old Tucson Studios in 1965, John Wayne and newcomer James Caan rode the horses down Front Street and stopped here at the Swede's gunsmith shop. Watch this famous scene as Duke guides his young sidekick, Mississippi, the kid who couldn't shoot straight.
There's the place.
Why, Cole Thornton.
Swede, good to see you.
And what brings you around here?
Well, I'm looking for a gun for a fellow that can't shoot in Mississippi. Swede Larson.
Oh, yeah.
Can you help us out?
Yeah, I think I got just the gun you're looking for.
The film was shot at night, which created a sense of mystique in the film.
They took a man out of retirement to do the lighting, but he was absolutely a perfectionist about light. And so he would take hours and hours to light the street for El Dorado. And Duke and I would sit, and Duke would say, well, I'm glad he's not working for my company, and I'm sure you're glad he's not working for Paramount. And we just laughed about it.
4 years later, in 1969, the Duke filmed the final chapter in the Hawks trilogy, Rio Lobo. That would be the last film the Duke shot here and the last film ever made by Howard Hawks. The Duke was in the twilight of his brilliant 50-year career. He had just one Best Actor nomination to his credit. He was nominated again in 1969 for his gritty portrayal of Marshal Rooster Cogburn in True Grit. The Duke took just a half a day off from filming at Old Tucson to fly back to Hollywood for the Oscar ceremony. He won. He was to return to Old Tucson the next morning to continue filming. So we planned a surprise for Duke on the set. We canvassed every drugstore in Tucson looking for eye patches like he wore in True Grit. We outfitted the film crew and all the employees with one. We even put one on Duke's movie horse. He came through the back gate that morning and nobody looked at him or waved to him, which was unusual. When he arrived on the set and got out of his car, we all turned around with patches on, and it just broke him up. It was a special time for him, and certainly for all of us.
And I remember him saying, if I'd known I'd have got it by wearing a patch, I'd have worn it 30 years ago.
Well, we were at the lower corral sorting cattle, and you could see him coming because that's a big man. And when he got there, I've always called him Duke forever. But I don't know why I did this, but as he got closer, I said, Mr. Wayne, I congratulate you. He says, screw you, Fletcher, Mr. Fletcher. He says, don't call me that again. So I had to say, okay, Duke, thanks. I congratulate you, Duke, and he was very happy about that. He was just a natural guy.
After completing his final film in 1976, The Shootist, the Duke's cancer returned. In a courageous fashion, he quietly passed away in June 1979. The world lost a true original. In an amazing 50-year career, Wayne embodied the American hero in more than 175 movies. He was proud that his films grossed $750 million, unprecedented in its day. Wayne left a characteristic mark on the film industry and Old Tucson that will never be replaced.
And he is still much alive in people's minds. He is still a big draw. His films are still shown today. There's probably a John Wayne Film Festival every weekend somewhere. And to be in the public eye after all these years really says it all. I'm talking about older people, yes, but even people in their 30s and 40s. Usually the father or the grandfather introduced them as children to John Wayne, and he's still very much alive.
Despite his huge success, John Wayne never developed an ego. He was on screen the way he was off screen, one of a kind, truly an American icon. He never believed that he could become what he ultimately became. He never stopped learning, and that, along with his humble roots, is where the genuine quality came from. The Duke once said that Westerns are closer to art than anything else in the motion picture business. And if that be so, the Duke is truly the master. After filming 300 motion picture and television shows here at Old Tucson, I have many great memories, but none better than my friendship with John Wayne, whom I think of as unforgettable. Adios.